Ladies and gentlemen, please join me now in welcoming Mr. Jeff Kennett.
Well, good morning all. Thank you for coming. I've been asked to talk about leadership this morning. What an appropriate time to be talking about leadership when we have none in the country whatsoever. So I've been allocated 30 minutes. I hope I don't take that long because leadership is a very simple subject and leadership applies right across life spectrum. And I want to just very quickly outline to you what I think leadership is about, and then if you've got any questions, answers and abuse, I'll take it later on. But I can assure you I enjoy the abuse a lot more than the former because I'm more used to dealing with it. Can I just say, when I said leadership is easy, I genuinely believe it is, if those who are in a position of leadership understand the fundamental ingredients that make up good leadership. Can I further say that I think those ingredients into good leadership are not just about those who occupy what might be described as leadership positions, but all of us, in our domestic lives, with our families, in our commercial life, regardless of whether you're a CEO or just head a group of people at some stage in the organisation, or in fact you might occupy positions in not-for-profit, commercial, political. The principles of leadership are very, very simple. And I call them my 5 fingers of leadership. And they're been drawn on a life that I'm probably halfway through. I tend to live to about 150, which won't please some of you. So they're not drawn from the left, they're not drawn from the right, they're not politically based. So very, very quickly, what are they? Firstly, you've got to have an understanding of where you want to go to over a period of time. So you must have a vision. If you have a look at the country at the moment, if I was asked to ask any of you where you think any of the political leaders or politicians want to take the country by 2050, I wonder if any of you have any idea whatsoever. I certainly don't. So on a test of leadership, our federal political class would fail simply because not only have they not developed a vision as to where they want to take the country, but they certainly haven't articulated it. So good leaders, regardless of where you apply leadership, must have a vision. And can I secondly say, within that vision, it's got to be over a period of time. It can't be just for this year, this year's results. At Beyond Blue, and I've got my former, well, my former, she's still the CEO of Beyond Blue there, I'm the former. We worked on 5-year time frames. So Beyond Blue 1 was 2000 to 2005, BB2, 2005 to 10, etc. But politically, and for many of us commercially, even a 5-year time frame is too short. We should be thinking now, all of us, about where we want the country to be by 2050. And 2050 is only 32 years away. That isn't a long time, for those of us who have been around for a while will realise. And so my youngest grandchildren, she will probably live to 100 years of age. 32 years is only 1/3 of her life. And if we can't think ahead, if we can't plan what we want for this country, or you plan what you want for your businesses over a reasonable period of time, I suspect you're going to be a weakened body to some degree. That's not to say within that 32-year time frame you can't then break it down to 5-year segments so that you can measure success and change slightly if need to be. But you do have to think long term. There has to be a vision. The second most important ingredient is that of people management. A good leader will understand their strengths and weaknesses, more importantly their weaknesses, and be prepared to admit them and put around you people who have the skills that you don't have. You don't want sycophants surrounding you. You want people, the first or the second best in their field, and then you want to give them the opportunity to fly, to be part of a team, but to be able to challenge and to come up with new ideas. I keep saying to people that no one on their own achieves a thing in life. Teams of people do. So when we all saluted Cathy Freeman when she won that wonderful race in Sydney in 2000 at the Olympics, while we all applauded Cathy, there had been teams of people who for years had got her to that position to win. So people are terribly important, particularly if you are big enough to understand you don't have all the answers and you need good people around you. The third finger of leadership is that of strategy. If you want to be somewhere after 32 years or 5 years, how are you going to get there? What do you actually have to do to actually deliver on that vision? And therefore working both yourself as perhaps leader of that team together with the people that you've collected around you becomes terribly important. You've got to have a strategy that will actually use the people you've got to deliver the vision. The fourth thing is advocacy. What is the point of having a vision if no one knows about it? What is the point of having a strategy if no one knows about it? And there is a lot of benefit to those that you're dealing with, whether they're your customers or communities at large, if they can look at a team of people and say, hey, they're a highly talented team of people. So even the people you select in that people management sector become terribly important in terms of your face to market. But there has to be advocacy. And without letting the community know what it is you're trying to achieve, you undermine or put at risk your overall performance. On the other hand, if in fact you continually change the content of your advocacy, you're going to confuse the market. So if the head of BHP came out one day, we're going to sell our oil assets, the next day someone else comes out and says, no, we're not, and this argument continues publicly for a period of time, not only do the employees lose confidence, but so too do their clients, so too do the stock markets, and therefore the value of that company drops. So advocacy is important. It's not to say you can't change from time to time. If in fact you find over a 5-year period that circumstances change, you need to readjust, or if you make a major mistake. But that's when transparency becomes terribly important. You admit it and you move on. Vision, people, strategy, advocacy. And the last figure of leadership, in my opinion, is that of reward. And what do I mean by reward? Reward is not when you stand up there in front of the TV cameras and say, I'm an infrastructure Prime Minister and you haven't built a bloody thing, when you might be talking about what you're going to do in the future with the Snowy Mountains River Scheme, etc. Reward is what your clients, your consumers, your customers, your public come to recognise over a period of time based on their evaluation on whether you're delivering on your vision, whether the team of people are working well together, whether the strategy is working and the advocacy that you've been bringing all this together is actually working. So it's no point me saying, perhaps as a president of a football club, we're going to win 5 premierships over the next 3 years, or I'm a premiership member of a good club. We've got to deliver on the field. For some, reward is about profit. It's all the bottom line. I don't necessarily agree with that because I think there's more in life than profit. But for many, in the commercial sense, that is how we're judged. And sadly, with so many of these pimply-nosed bloody analysts that are running around today who are 20 or 21 who have never invested a dollar of their own, all they ever do is look at the bottom line. But for other people, not-for-profits, it might be, as we did at Beyond Blue, try to increase public education about mental health and get governments to give mental health a higher priority. At football clubs, it may be about a premiership. There's a whole different range by which the reward factor comes into play. But it's not for you, the leader, to say that you're a successful leader. It's for others to make the decision themselves as a result of the effort you collectively put into play. So the 5 fingers of leadership: vision, people, strategy, advocacy, and finally reward. Now that's all very simplistic, but it's clear. And if you think about that in terms of your own lives, personally, family, community, business, not-for-profit, sport, those 5 fingers of leadership can be applied very easily in all of those cases. And then if you just go back to the federal scene and try and ask yourself again the question, where's the vision? Who knows? Where are the people? Well, they're jumping ship or they're being thrown out of ships. the moment, left, right and centre. Where's the strategy? No idea. No idea whatsoever. Where's the advocacy? It changes every day. And what's the reward? There's none. So it's not just one side of politics. If you had your chance, your opportunity, you'd put them all in a ship and push it out to sea and start again. And I think the reality of the current circumstances just show you how totally bereft the country is of leadership. This citizenship issue is not necessarily of anyone's making, except that a lot of politicians didn't do their homework correctly before they stood for Parliament. But once one individual was found to have been out of line, then there have been consequences. If you and I in business or in football or anything else understand that you've got a crisis of some sort, you move quickly to sear the pain. This just goes on and on and on. And to be quite honest, the best thing would have been just to have that quick audit of every member. Most would have been cleared. There would have been a group that needed further adjudication and you would have dealt with that. But this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen. And in terms of an example, a test case in terms of leadership, this is a Harvard classic of how not to do something. If these people were in a business, they'd have been sacked a long time ago. If they were on a board, they would have been sacked within a year. Leadership is not difficult, but when you get so compromised that you don't know what you're aiming to achieve or deliver, then it makes it very, very hard to have a constant performance. Can I now just very briefly touch on something else, if I may? As part of leadership, when any organisation I'm with, although people might at times question me, my first priority is always good governance. Good governance is terribly important. It's the responsibility of a leader. So when we say a board is responsible for the selection of a CEO, I think that is right, but I've now relegated that to number 3 in my list of responsibilities for a chair or for a board member. So it's firstly about good governance. It's secondly about the welfare of the people you're responsible for. Now, whether that's a football club, whether it's players, whether it's administrators, makes no difference. Every employee is equal and has a right to the same respect from the board and from the leaders of the organisation. And if the welfare of your employees is good and high, not only their mental welfare but their physical welfare, you have no doubt that the outcomes will be so much better than otherwise. And increasingly, with so many now women working, women with children, that requires a flexibility in the workplace to accommodate their domestic needs in order to deliver a positive outcome. And I keep using the example some years ago where I was in an office and this lady came into the office late, flustered, and I'd been speaking to a group of people there, and I went up to this lady afterwards and I said, "You look flustered, are you all right?" She said, yes, I'm single mum, I've got 2 children, I've had to get them up, get them dressed, get them fed, get them to school, get here by 9 o'clock, and the traffic was difficult, and I'm late, and I know people will see I'm late. And she was anxious and uptight. There was no way she was going to be productive for a period of time. I said to her boss, "Look, I don't know if you know what's happening here. This is the circumstances of this lady. What do you recommend?" I said, "Give her flexible time. Tell her she can come in at 9:30. She'll be able to work immediately then and be productive." So we've got to keep adjusting to the times. So for me, leadership is about good governance. Leadership is about the mental and physical welfare of those you're responsible for. For a CEO or a board, it's then about the selection of the CEO. Last point I leave with you is this one about your own condition. You can't lead your family as well as you want to. You can't lead your organisation as well as you want to unless you are mentally and physically fit. And so therefore it becomes terribly important, I think, for each and every one of us to realise that if we're going to perform in the way we want to perform, whether it's at home or commercially or on the football field, you need to be in a good place. So if you'd asked me 10, 15 years ago what's the most important thing in my life, I would have said my wife and my children. Ask me today and I say it's my own personal condition. Not out of egotism, not out of anything else, but realising, having worked with Beyond Blue for so long, that it is so important that we are in as good a position as possible. You can hardly lead a team of people unless you lead by example rather than instruction. So for those of you who have children, or in my case grandchildren, you know as well as I do, you can't tell them anything. They all know much more than we do. So the only way we can help our children and grandchildren is to lead by example. And that applies in work as well. At work, with the teams you lead, you've got to set the agenda by example, not by instruction. I think I'll leave it at that. Look forward to speaking to you later if I'm still here, and if I'm not, just imagine I was.